Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be my review of the Truly Devious series. Because I'm going to be reviewing the entire series, I'm going to leave timestamps both on screen and in the description box below, so you can skip ahead to whichever book you're most interested in hearing about. To give you a quick summary before you do so, the first book, Truly Devious, is about a girl called Stevie who is really interested in true crime, and she is accepted into Ellingham Academy. She is really excited about this because Ellingham Academy has an interesting history. The founder's wife and child were abducted. No one knows what really happened. All they know was that there was a letter posted to the academy written by someone who is now called Truly Devious. Stevie is really interested in true crime and she's always been interested in this case, and so she's obviously really excited to get to the school and see where it all happened. And then once she's at the school, things start to go a little bit wrong and there are more modern day cases, let's say. So the first book, Truly Devious, was a really fun book. I really like the fact that the main character Stevie was into true crime. I am also quite into true crime, although not to the same extent as she was. She was kind of like an amateur detective, kind of like Veronica Mars. I found Truly Devious to be very easy to read. I think I read it in just a couple of sittings because it was really fast paced and really entertaining, and I really liked the way that the characters interacted with each other. They kind of bounced off one another and it was really engaging. I did have a lot of fun with this one and I was really engrossed in the case that Stevie was investigating, especially because Stevie herself was so passionate about it. I also always really love books set in boarding schools, and this one didn't have the usual rich people drama because they were there, the students were there from all different kinds of backgrounds, so they weren't necessarily rich, but it was still really entertaining nonetheless. Once the things started happening at the school, I was really engrossed. The book was also quite inclusive. Stevie, the main character, suffers from anxiety, and I think she had 1 or 2 panic attacks in this first book, and in my opinion it was depicted really well. Stevie also has a best friend who is gay and who is dating a non-binary character. I do have to say that the only downside to this book was that I freaking hated the romance between Stevie and David. I think it was meant to be like a hate to love thing, but it didn't really turn out that way. I honestly was not a fan. I thought that David came across as quite almost abusive at some points, but it became more so in the later books. In this one he was just really freaking annoying and they had no chemistry together, and I really don't like the way that Maureen Johnson was pushing it. Overall I gave Truly Devious 4 stars because it was a really fun read, and other than the romance I didn't really see anything wrong with it. It's not an all-time favourite, but it was a really good book. Now onto The Vanishing Stair, which I didn't love as much. I thought The Vanishing Stair was a complete filler book. I thought it was unnecessary. I think instead of doing a trilogy, Maureen Johnson probably should have just done a duology and combined the 3 books. If The Vanishing Stair had been split between books 1 and 2 instead, I think the pacing would have been better and I would have been more interested. Instead, in this book, not much happened right up until the very end when everything kicked off. That said, it was still really easy to read and really enjoyable. It's just a shame that the beginning and the middle were such fillers. I did enjoy that we got the answer to the riddle in this book. I wasn't expecting that until the final book in the trilogy, although the riddle was admittedly a bit of a stretch and I didn't enjoy that one so much. I really liked the fact that there was a new mystery in this book. That was really interesting. I liked that it sort of brought new things to light. It wasn't just dead body for the sake of being a dead body. I was really interested in seeing Stevie's character progression, but I don't really think she had much of one. My battery died horribly and I can't remember where I got to, so bear with me a second. So I think I was just about to talk about how much I hate romance in this book as well. David progressively gets worse as the book goes on. He and Stevie spend half the book apart, and yet she still feels this kind of weird connection to him, and I really didn't enjoy it. I really don't think it's a healthy relationship at all, and while I was reading The Vanishing Stair, I didn't know how Maureen Johnson was going to kind of bring it back if her plan was to have David and Stevie end up together. I did really like Stevie's friendships with the other classmates. Nate was personally my favourite. She spent a lot of time with him, which was really sweet. And while the characters themselves didn't really have much growth in this book, not much really happened to them to have any character growth, the relationships between the classmates was still really sweet and really well done, so I enjoyed that a lot. So taking all of those things into account, I rated The Vanishing Stair 3 stars because honestly it was a filler book. There was absolutely no reason to spread this series out over 3 books in my opinion. Having read The Hand on the Wall, that just proves my point even more. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about The Hand on the Wall now because it's the newest book. I don't know when this video is going up, but hopefully it will be on the release week of The Hand on the Wall, so it should be coming out very soon. So The Hand on the Wall. First of all, let me just pat myself on the back for actually finishing a book series. This hardly ever happens. I'm really bad at finishing series and I managed to do it. with a series that I was feeling kind of meh about after the second book, so go me. The Hand on the Wall, I rated 3 stars. I felt similarly towards it as I felt towards The Vanishing Stair. There just was not enough going on, and considering that Truly Devious was such a strong series starter, I was quite disappointed by this one because I feel like it had, or it could have had, all of the elements to make a really good finishing book. So I'm just going to quickly talk about the positives. So first of all, I did really enjoy finding out more of what happened at Ellingham, even though things kind of wrapped up in The Vanishing Stair in regards to George Marsh and Iris. There were still a few other things that were left to be discovered, and this book covered that, and I really enjoyed it. Some of it felt a little bit convoluted, but this is a YA mystery series with a teenage detective, so that's about what I expected. And I really like the way that Stevie pieced together the entire mystery about present day Ellingham Academy and what had happened to her classmates. She did a good job with that. I would have liked to have seen more of her thought process, because I feel like throughout the books you kind of see her get into the zone, kind of like Sherlock Holmes does when he goes into his mind palace in the TV show. Then all of a sudden she's got the answer, but she's not telling the reader necessarily at the beginning. She's just like, I've cracked it. And then you don't really find out how. It's just very much her getting into her own head. We're not really seeing her piece things together, which was a bit, it wasn't annoying, I guess. It was just kind of not written all that well. I would have liked to have seen her journey and her thought process as she was discovering these things, because she's a teen detective. That's quite interesting. I said that Stevie's anxiety was depicted really well in the first book in the trilogy, but in this one I didn't really like it. Something about it felt really off to me, because Stevie had an anxiety attack towards the end of the book with almost no mention of her anxiety at the beginning of the book, and this anxiety attack, as they want to do, came out of nowhere. It didn't feel as though it came out of nowhere because that's what anxiety attacks do. It felt like it came out of nowhere because the author forgot that her character had anxiety, and she suddenly thought, oh, I'll need to fit this in before the book ends. And towards the end of the book, Stevie has an anxiety attack. So that was a bit disappointing for me. I was honestly expecting the rep to be a lot better, but as it so happened, I kind of also forgot that Stevie had anxiety until she had that panic attack, which is really, really disappointing because it was depicted so well in the first book. Plot-wise, I did really enjoy how fast-paced the book is. It's again really easy to read. I flew through it. I read it really, really quickly. There are a lot more revelations about both mysteries, and this book tied everything together nicely. That said, I do wish that this trilogy had been condensed into just 2 books, because I feel like after the first book, Maureen Johnson just stretched the story out till there was almost nothing left. And I think if this series had been a duology instead, it would have been a lot stronger, a lot tighter. It would have kept my interest a lot more, and hopefully then there would have been less awful romance. I'm just quickly going to rant about the romance again, because in this book it was even worse, and I am honestly offended that Stevie is even still interested in David. He literally spent a good 60 to 70% of the book, if not 80%, not speaking to Stevie. She would talk to him when they were in a scene together and he would just completely blank her, or he would talk to her friends and then ignore her. He would give her friends opportunities or things to do, but he wouldn't give Stevie anything. He would deny her. I'm sorry, but that is like almost abusive. It's horrible, and I am really quite angry, aggravated, almost upset that Maureen Johnson has written the YA relationship this way. I really hope that teenagers who are reading this series doesn't think that that's a normal relationship, and if a guy treats them like that, or a person treats them like that, that they should still be at their beck and call and be friendly towards them and like count them as a potential partner in the future, because honestly it was awful. It was really poor taste and I really did not enjoy it, and this is probably one of my least favourite YA romances I've ever read about. Normally I'm kind of like on the fence about them, I don't really care, but you know, if they end up together, it's YA, they're teenagers, they can do what they want. In this one I was honestly hoping they would not get together because it was an awful relationship, and as you can tell I'm quite upset that Maureen Johnson wrote it that way. It was a very unhealthy relationship to portray and to show to teens as though it's normal, because it's not. So overall this series was a bit of a mixed bag. I really enjoyed the first book. The latter 2 books were kind of bland in comparison, probably because they were stretched out too much and the romance was awful. Those were the 2 biggest gripes I had in regards to this series. Overall I would probably give the series 3 stars because it was middle of the road, very average. It probably won't stick out to me in the future, and I feel like there was a lot of lost potential there. So 3 stars for this series overall. Hopefully this video gave you some things to think about. If you have read this series, then let me know in the comments below and we can discuss it. Try not to post spoilers, but I'm imagining if any of you have gotten to this point in the video, then you've read the books already. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will speak to you all in my next one. Bye!